Hi, everyone, and welcome to the March 14th, 2025 Pi Day episode of On Iowa Politics. It's 314. This week on the podcast, the latest wrinkle in the story of the Lutheran Services charity and Governor Kim Reynolds, a tenuous legal partnership between the Iowa Attorney General's office and the Iowa Auditor's office, the unfortunate displacement of a refugee family in Iowa, and Congresswoman Ashley Hinson's pledge to continue holding town halls. Hello, everyone. I'm Erin Murphy, the Des Moines Bureau Chief for the Gazette in Cedar Rapids. And in honor of Pi Day, I'd like to hear everyone's favorite kind of pie. So as we go around the horn here with introductions, tell us your favorite pie. And we start, as always, with Gazette Deputy Bureau Chief Tom Barton. You're ordering your favorite slice at the local diner. Tom, what is it?
I'm going to have to say banana cream.
That's a solid one. Solid entry to start us off. All right. Lead Des Moines Bureau Chief Maya Marchel office here. Maya, what's your favorite pie?
I'm going to go with the 5-layer chocolate pie from Betty's Pies in northern Minnesota. Minnesotans, you know what's up.
Wow, that making notes for my next road trip, because that sounds like something right up my alley. Sarah Watson of the Quad City Times is here. Hello, Sarah.
I'm especially partial to a key lime pie.
Tough to go wrong there. Jared McNett of the Sioux City Journal is with us. Jared, what's your pie?
Gooseberry, Erin.
Whoa. You know what? That checks out.
It's nice and tart. It's a very good tart kind of fruit pie.
Where are gooseberries native to? Where are gooseberries grown?
Around. They're around.
Wherever Snow White lives is where gooseberries are from.
Oh my gosh, we're learning so much today. I love it. We're not even through introductions. Gazette columnist Todd Dorman is here. What kind of pie does Todd Dorman love?
By the way, when our place growing up, we had a huge gooseberry bush and had that pie. It's seasonal. I agree with Sarah on the key lime for your warmer weather months, and then a nice pecan for the cold.
Nice, good call. Mine would be. I'm such a chocolate addict. Mine would be French silk. I can't turn down a good slice of French silk. Yeah, thanks. I am serious though. I am, and Bailey Chion, our producer, just echoed. So Bailey and I win 2-1 with everyone else. But I am road tripping to that place in Minnesota. Let's give me the details when we get offline here.
All right. Coincidentally, it's by a state park named Gooseberry Falls. So.
Wow. Well, there you go. There you go. Bringing it all together. All right. Let's get started this week. And we're going to start with Sarah Watson, for logistical reasons, if none other, for the benefit of you, those of you on the YouTubes. You're going to see Sarah disappear at some point here. She has other duties as assigned today. Life of a reporter is never dull. So before Sarah has to leave us, she has a great story that we wanted to talk about. And again, like I said in the intro, an interesting and tenuous legal partnership between the state offices of Republican Iowa Attorney General Brenna Bird and Democratic Iowa Auditor Rob Sand. I'll let Sarah tell you more, but the short version here for this intro is that the AG's office is defending the auditor's office in a lawsuit in court, and the two agencies effectively agree on the end goal in the case, but they don't agree on how to get there legally speaking, the argument that they should make. Is that do I understand that right? Is that about the long and short of it, Sarah?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So this is a Davenport records case. Essentially, the auditor's office and attorney general's office have reached this impasse on how to argue the case. And the auditor's office is actually asking the courts to force the attorney general's office to withdraw as counsel because the auditor's office claims that it has a conflict of loyalties in arguing this case and representing interests of other state agencies. And the attorney general's office is saying that it's its duty to argue the case on behalf of state entities in the best interest of the state. And so the actual case is whether the auditor's office should have confidential access to records of closed sessions as it audits how Davenport executed about $2 million in settlement payments with former staffers in 2023. So the auditor's office made a bunch of requests of the city of Davenport for records to see, okay, how did the city approve these payments? Did the city council give its approval for the city attorney to sign off on these payments? And asked for these closed session records to try to see, okay, did the city council actually approve these? And so the city then sued the auditor's office to try to squash this subpoena for closed session recordings. And the city argues that they're confidential under attorney-client privilege. But the auditor's office argues that these records are essential to determine whether the city followed proper internal procedures, and that the state code gives the auditor's office access to confidential records that are relevant to its review, but just not to release them to the public. So the Attorney General's office is representing the auditor's office in this case to try to get these closed session records. A district court actually ruled in favor of the auditor's office, and the city did what's called an interlocutory appeal to the Supreme Court. And so the auditor's office wants to essentially argue the same thing in front of the Supreme Court, that the auditor should have access to these records and the court should rule that it has access to these confidential records. But the Attorney General's office wants to argue that more of a technical argument that Davenport's appeal is premature and that the case should be directed back to the lower court for its ruling to avoid a potentially precedent-setting ruling against the auditor's office. But the auditor's office really feels like this is essential to the core functions of its office and wants the Supreme Court to rule in its favor, or an appeals court, whichever court takes it up. It believes that the Attorney General's office is making this argument or wants to make this argument because it is conflicted in representing other agencies, that other agencies may not want this argument that the auditor's office has access to confidential records, on the record. It doesn't want to be on the record arguing that. But the Attorney General's office says that's not right. It's a legally strategic move to avoid, like I said earlier, this precedent-setting ruling against the auditor's office if the courts rule that no, these records are protected by attorney-client privilege, which they believe is likely, according to the records that were filed in court and shared with us. So I thought this was important just because the auditor's office has made some of these arguments in the past that it should have broad access to records to conduct its duties, and thinks that the Attorney General's office is purposefully not making that argument. But obviously the Attorney General's office says, no, this is just a legally strategic move. So there hasn't been any update in the case since then. So we'll see where it plays out from there.
Yeah, and it's just so interesting because one thing the AG's office has said in there is accurate, that traditionally when the state is facing a lawsuit, it's the AG's office that argues it in court, and you see that any number of times, and it would go back to when Democratic Attorney General Tom Miller's office would be defending the state against lawsuits against laws passed by Republicans. So that's kind of always been the case. So that is accurate. I don't know if there's any other history on other state agencies defending themselves. It is interesting too, I feel like pointing out, and I don't know if this has come up at all, Sarah, but Rob Sand is a former staffer in the AG's office. He was a top staffer under AG Tom Miller, and so he's got that kind of in his blood still, and clearly would like to see a different approach here taken in court, and it's good. It's going to be interesting to see how this resolves itself. Moving on, we're going to skip now from Sarah over on the Mississippi to Jared over on the Missouri and go to a story about Lutheran Services, the charity that recently was maligned in social media posts by one current Trump administration official and one former one. The post by the former official was reposted by Elon Musk, the head of the Department of Government Efficiency, and I'm not saying the acronym word. The post called Lutheran Services a money laundering organization. it is, of course, not. That fact-checking service was provided to you free of charge by the On Iowa Politics podcast. Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds got pulled into this whole story a few weeks back when she testified to a congressional committee on government efficiency. And long story short here, a House Democrat asked Reynolds if she agreed with the social media post. Reynolds didn't answer directly as she attempted to try to add some context and caught some heat for that, and later clarified in a press conference back here in Iowa that she does not, in fact, believe Lutheran Services is a money laundering organization, which is solid ground to stand on because, again, it is not. Fast forward to this week, when Reynolds honored the organization Lutherans by declaring Tuesday Lutheran Services in Iowa Day. But it may have been a bit of unfortunate timing, as a story from our Jared McNett noted. Tell us about that, Jared.
So yeah, I knew that it was going to be Lutheran Services on the Hill Day or whatever on Tuesday because of talking to LSI people for other stuff I had been working on. But I did not realize that it was actually going to be designated Lutheran Services in Iowa Day. And once I saw that, then immediately the gears in my mind started turning. And that designation came as the federal government has refused to pay more than $1.5 million in outstanding reimbursements to the organization. That's what LSI has told me. And a stop work order from the federal government in January that went to organizations like LSI cut off funding that was getting used to help get refugee families settled into various communities. And that funding got cut off. And just last week, we reported that LSI was laying off employees from locations in Sioux City, Waterloo, and Des Moines. And kind of on both of those notes, on Monday, another one of our reporters, Dolly Butts, had a story quoting LSI's Director of Immigrant and Refugee Community Services, who showed up to City Council on Monday. He directly linked the lack of those reimbursements and the need to lay off staff, drew a connection between those two things. And, it's worth noting that LSI isn't just focused on immigration and refugee resettlement. They've got offices in every single county. They provide services related to behavioral health and early child care and foster care and adoption and a whole lot more than that. So all of the upheaval that they're kind of dealing with on this one front is sort of inevitably going to affect all of those other things. It just, by the fact that if you're reducing staff's going to have to focus on more things. They're going to be stretched more thin, all of that kind of stuff. So all of that happening, yes, as Tuesday was Lutheran Services in Iowa Day.
Grimace emoji GIF there. Jared, did any of the folks with LSI talk about looking ahead too? Like, is there further potential pain ahead, or do they feel like this is a course correction that keeps them stable for now?
Well, there was, because I found out about the layoffs from the Warren Act website for Iowa, and there was another kind of smaller listing that they had since the first one. So it's tough to say whether or not it's just going to be a one-off or what in terms of how much longer this is going to impact them.
Yeah. All right. Moving right through things. And speaking of refugees, Jared has another terrific story to tell us about this week. Although, in full disclosure, this one tugs the heartstrings even a little more. It involves a refugee family in Iowa, all that they had to go through to be here. And now they're all having to go through more challenges. I'll let Jared take it from here. It's a great, if unfortunate story. Jared, tell us about it.
Yeah, so this story came out last Saturday. It's one I'm really proud of. I talked with an Eritrean family. It was a father, a mother, and a son. The son is in middle school. They made it to Sioux City in April of 2024 after a journey that on and off took more than a decade and about 7,500 miles going from Eritrea in East Africa to neighboring Ethiopia to Israel, and then to the U.S. And one of the motivating factors in that was to get better treatment for their son, who's had to deal with the cancer diagnosis. He recently had surgery for that, which went well from what I was told, and hopefully won't keep him away from playing soccer, which he's a big fan of, for too long. So they've been settled in Sioux City since last year. The father's working at Tyson. Mom is helping set things up at home. And their son is big on math and science classes, which is always nice to hear kids say that instead of the dumb stuff that I was occupied with when I was the same age. So that was good to hear. And in early February, the apartment building they were in had a fire. So the building had to be red tagged. And they were actually one of 4 refugee families in the building that LSI was helping. So since then, and a big part of what my story got into is how the family I talked to has been trying to get things back together as they're still, working on their English every day. I had to talk with them through a translator. So they're still working on that every day, and they're working with, LSI, which has now been hobbled because of, federal action. LSI has said it needs to raise about $295,000 across 3 of its sites to fulfill a commitment to the families that were hit by that stop work order that I mentioned. And of that total, it needs to raise about $80,000 for the Sioux City office and the families here, including those that are affected by the fire. So that was another ripple in the story, is that there's a direct line between federal action, not to just Sioux City locally, but to a specific family that lost their home because of a fire and has a kid with a cancer diagnosis.
Yeah, man, wild stuff. So what's look forward for us, Jared? What's next for this family? What's the most pressing kind of need and action, and what are folks trying to do to help?
Yeah, so they managed to get settled into another, literally, I think the day of my story coming out, or maybe even the evening before, they were able to get settled into a new apartment unit in the same apartment complex, actually, because they wanted to keep their son in the same school district and everything. But LSI, because we run church news every week in the Journal, and LSI is still asking volunteers for donations to help get new apartment units furnished, for all of the other families that were impacted by the fire as well. So it's still, a recovery effort as far as that goes.
Yeah, and if someone's listening to this and would like to help, can they find information at SiouxCityJournal.com?
They can find it there, and I'm sure they could find it by checking out like LSI's Facebook pages as well, because I know they're pretty consistent about posting about that kind of stuff.
Okay, very good. Great stuff. Thanks for that, Jared. All right, moving quickly through the lineup this week, we're going to finish up by revisiting the topic of congressional town halls. If you listened to us a couple of weeks ago, we talked about public events that Western Iowa Congressman Randy Feenstra participated in. Not necessarily pure town halls, as I recall, but public events. More recently, a Republican Iowa Congresswoman Ashley Hinson has said she plans to continue to attend town hall meetings in her Eastern Iowa district. Tom, I believe you may have been the reporter who asked Congresswoman Hinson about this topic. I know you were on the conference call regardless. Tell us about what she had to say in the face of orders from U.S. House leadership that their members should not do this.
Yeah, I did ask Representative Hinson this question during her weekly press call last week. The question was asked because last week you had U.S. House Republican leadership essentially advised lawmakers to skip in-person public forums amid angry protest over efforts by President Donald Trump's administration to slash the federal government. Congresswoman Hinson, Republican from Marion, said that she will continue hosting in-person public town halls across Northeast Iowa's 2nd Congressional District. Since she was first elected I guess she was first elected in 2020, but since first taking office in 2021, she has made an effort to hold in-person town halls in each of the 22 counties that make up that 2nd Congressional District. And so, she's done 42 in-person town halls since, like I said, since taking office in 2021. She's also, according to her office, done dozens of virtual town halls, and said that she will be doing town halls this year during this Congress, and continued to vow that, she will uphold her pledge to still do a town hall in every single county that she represents. She said that her schedule has kept her in Washington, D.C. much of the past few weeks, but that her office was working on scheduling town halls in the district, and a spokesperson for Congresswoman Hinson followed up to say that she will also host virtual telephone town halls, and that she will be putting those town halls in her newsletter to let people know ahead of time, and directed people to her congressional website where they can sign up for her newsletter so that they can stay up to date and informed as to when those town halls have been scheduled. I have not seen anything to date about town halls being scheduled either, this week or next week, or at least in the upcoming few weeks.
Sorry, I was just going to say to that, and that a question I was going to ask is if Congresswoman Hinson and her office are differentiating between public, kind of like what we talked about with Congressman French, the difference between a public event and a town hall, where the latter is literally like an open forum for the public to come in and ask questions. Because just this morning or yesterday, very recently, Congresswoman Hinson put out a new schedule update, and it has 3 public events on them, but none of them are town halls.
Right. So she continues to hold events throughout the district, touring different businesses and meeting with different constituency groups. She will continue to do that. But in addition to that, she has said, and her office has clarified, that she will continue to do in-person town halls going forward, where she takes questions from constituents. And I did ask kind of a clarifying point, will these be in-person, public events? And her office said, yes, they will be in-person public town halls. And again, in addition to also doing the virtual telephone town halls where people call in, but it's a little bit more controlled.
Right.
Anyway, and then I should say it's worth noting, earlier this week, Indivisible, Black Hawk County, announced that it's going to host what it calls a empty chair town hall for Congresswoman Hinson on Saturday at the Waterloo Center for the Arts. The organization says that it sent several meeting requests to Congresswoman Hinson to participate in a public event or a town hall type event organized by the group, by kind of this progressive liberal advocacy group, Indivisible, and the organization says that all of their requests were denied, and in a news release says that because residents of Iowa's 2nd Congressional District have questions and concerns that they want addressed, Indivisible is going to host this event without her. They argue that Iowa residents and his constituents, need the opportunity to ask questions about what's happening regarding funding freezes and personnel cuts. And in their statement said that because Congresswoman Hinson is a member of the Doge caucus in the House of Representatives, they say that it's imperative that she understand the effects these cuts are having on Iowans. But I guess to circle back, that's kind of the reasoning why we last week heard Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson of Louisiana encourage members of the GOP House caucus to stop doing these in-person town halls as they faced angry crowds complaining about funding cuts and mass firings of federal employees led by billionaire Elon Musk's Department of government efficiency. Johnson told reporters that the people who have filled up recent town hall meetings across the country are professional protesters, echoing a similar claim by President Trump that paid troublemakers are filling the GOP town halls.
AstroTurf, phrase from back in the day for that.
Liberal groups, including, Indivisible, have promoted and organized large demonstrations at these congressional town halls to protest the administration's actions, but there is no evidence that attendees are being paid. Nonetheless, Johnson said that it would be wise for House Republicans not to play into that, and suggested that telephone town halls would be a good alternative for members to hear from their constituents.
Yeah, and to that Indivisible event you're talking about in Blackhawk County, Tom, so I say tomorrow, we're recording Thursday afternoon. So on Friday here in central Iowa, Democrats are holding an event that they're, and I can't remember exactly what they're calling it, but the point of it is to essentially point out that central Iowa Republican Zach Nunn is not holding town halls. So they're going to hold a town hall here, and they're bringing down Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, who you may remember from the presidential ticket in last year's election. And our Maya remembers as her governor, as a former Minnesotan. So with that strong connection, Maya's going to cover that for us tomorrow afternoon. But Maya, I'm right about that, right? The Democrats are trying to highlight Zach Nunn's lack of town halls by bringing the governor down, right?
Yeah, for sure. And it's both in Iowa, and he's also traveling to other Midwestern states. I believe he's going to Omaha on Saturday. Interestingly enough, both the district that Congressman Zach Nunn represents and the district he's going to, the 2nd Congressional District in Nebraska, is represented by Don Bacon. Both of these congressmen won one with slim numbers, or slimmer compared to other seats across the U.S. In the 2024 election. So maybe there's something there with that. These are more vulnerable Republicans compared to their other members. But yeah, this kind of started, I think Walz tweeted out March 4th when a story came out about how, as Tom explained, the NRCC chief told House Republicans or encouraged them not to hold in-person town halls. And he said, "That's a shame if your Republican representative won't meet with you because their agenda is so unpopular. Maybe a Democrat will." And then he said he'll come and host an event in their district to help local Democrats beat them. And as of now, Congressman Nunn doesn't have any town halls scheduled. It's unclear if he will at this point. He hasn't answered it directly like Congresswoman Hinson has. So,
yeah. Todd, I wanted to ask you, as Tom noted, congressional Republican leaders have told their members they shouldn't attend these town halls because they're filled with Democrats and Democratic plants. Have you been offered any payment to attend any of these town halls, Todd?
No, that's one gravy train I have not boarded. But
shoot, it's tough out
yeah,
there.
that's not happening. I'm not saying that there is nobody at those events that isn't paid to work for the Democratic Party. There probably would be Republicans at a Democratic congressperson's town hall. But yeah, this is the same kind of thing. You had Alex Jones and people talking about crisis actors after school shootings and things like that. There's no, they're not going around and, taking people off the street and giving them $50 to go yell at Ashley Hinson. It's not happening. And I mean, Democrats tried to argue that too back in 2009. The Tea Party flared up. It was regarded as a grassroots reaction to the Obama administration and its agenda. But, it had the backing of the sort of the Koch brothers operation and some other larger groups that were also funding sort of the national apparatus of the Tea Party. And that's where, as Jared indicated, that's where Democrats said it wasn't grassroots, it was AstroTurf. And so they argued too that these were plants, or these were, these were, But then, I think when they got crushed in the 2010 election, I think they probably felt differently about who those people are. It turned out that they were voters and they didn't want them anymore. So, you look around at what's happened since Inauguration Day, and I don't know that you'd have to search hard to find people that don't like it. And, to show up to a town hall, I think no matter what you do, it's going to be an overflow crowd at events like that. So, yeah, I don't think you really have to pay fake protesters. There's plenty of real people out there that are pissed.
I'll tell you, if anybody out there wants to yell at me, don't pay anyone else to do it. Just give me the money. I'll yell at myself. Even I have no problem doing that. Or you can just yell at me. I'm fine with that. I could use the extra money. Don't pay someone else to do it. So Maya's going to cover that for us tomorrow. That'll be interesting here. And then I'm going to do some homework out loud for the group, and also just to kind of relay it to our listeners in case anyone wonders why we didn't get to it. There was some reporting late this week from, I believe, Dave Price from the great TV stations and then the Des Moines Register about some possible Democratic candidates in the 3rd district here who would be running in a presumably primary, if multiple did, to take on Zach Nunn. So we'll definitely cover that on next week's show, but we had a lot of good stuff to get to. Especially, it was great having Jared and Sarah back this week because they had a lot of great reporting we wanted to get to. So we'll talk about that on next week's episode of On Iowa Politics, but that's going to do it for this week's episode. We hope you enjoyed it. If you're not already, please subscribe to us on your streaming service of choice or on YouTube, where you can also smash that like button or tap it. We had a discussion afterwards. If you prefer to tap the like button, that's fine too. You can also find the podcast each week on your preferred Gazette or lead newspaper website. And now that you've listened to the On Iowa Politics podcast, make sure you're also subscribed to the On Iowa Politics newsletter, where every morning you can find all the latest politics and government coverage from our team. You can subscribe to that free newsletter at the Gazette's website, thegazette.com. And lastly, don't forget that the work of everyone you heard here today, all these great stories can be found on the pages and websites of the Quad City Times, Muscatine Journal, Cedar Rapids Gazette, Waterloo Cedar Falls Courier, Mason City Globe Gazette, Council Bluffs Daily Nonpareil, and the Sioux City Journal. For Tom Barton, Maya Marchel, Hoff, Sarah Watson, Jared McNett, Todd Dorman, and our producer Bailey Sheehan, I'm Erin Murphy, and as we go out here, I'm going to abuse my authority a little bit as podcast host and make a personal note. I lost someone close to me this week, so just everyone out there, love each other and be good to each other and stay healthy and F cancer. We love you, Sticks. Be well, everyone, and be good.